Yeah. Oh, look at these two.
Coldplay threw a couple on the Kiss. Coldplay can fix this, Cam. Turns out they were having...
Either they're having an affair or they're just very shy.
One crimson-lit night at Gillette Stadium. Coldplay's ballad reached its soaring peak, and the stadium. Kiss Cam cruised lazily over rows of cheering fans until it locked onto two faces that instantly rewrote Boston's social history. Front and center on every jumbotron, Kristen Kit, dazzling in designer silk, leaning intimately toward her boss, tech titan Andy Byron. Phones snapped. TikToks exploded. Within seconds, 65,000 people gasped in unison and 3 words flooded every feed on the planet. She's still married. But that 7-second clip was only the spark at the mouth of a hidden tunnel. Follow it with me, and you'll enter a world where fortunes outlive empires. Where scandals aren't shouted down, they're smothered in velvet, and where one ambitious woman dared to test how far she could push against walls built of old money and older silence. Stick around. The real shock isn't the kiss, it's what happened when the music faded. And here's the part nobody saw on the broadcast. The Dynasty's reaction to maneuver, so cold, so calculated, it makes public outrage look like a warm hug. When the footage detonated online, most husbands would scramble for statements or lawyers. Andrew Kit didn't even blink in public. He vanished, no tweets, no frantic interviews, because silence is the Cabot family's native tongue. The Cabots aren't merely wealthy. They're the backbone of East Coast aristocracy, whispered about in the same breath as Rockefellers and Vanderbilts. But with one difference, they absolutely refuse to perform for cameras. Their creed is carved into family lore. No scandal ever leaves the house. Andrew learned the rule in childhood drawing rooms, where an unguarded word could exile a cousin from inheritance. At Andover, he mastered poker face etiquette. At Harvard, he sharpened it until silence became sharper than words. So when Kristen's kiss went viral, he executed the oldest strategy in his bloodline: freeze. Retreat, watch the world talk itself. Horse, the public mistook it for cowardice. Old Boston recognized it as battlefield discipline. But dynasties don't rely on silence alone. They wield invisible levers. The first lever pulled would quietly shift billions in. Kristen never saw it coming. Long before social media sold luxury lifestyles, Cabots perfected the art of invisible influence. They financed revolutions with rum shipments, lobbied presidents over mahogany tables, and purchased entire coastlines before zoning laws existed. Family mansions resemble living museums, portraits that glare back, libraries smelling of 1720 parchment. Secret passageways sealed with codes only the bloodline knows. Their flagship crown jewel today is Privateer Rum, a 6th-generation distillery that shuns billboards, influencers, and hashtags, yet somehow pours into the tumblers of every private club from Beacon Hill to Palm Beach. Andrew isn't just CEO. He's curator of a relic and sentinel of a fortune rumored north of $15 billion. Each financial tentacle trusts, LLCs, shell partnerships, spreads like ivy in the dark. Journalists who chase paperwork eventually stumble into polished, brass doors locked from the inside. And in 2020, those doors cracked open for a single outsider, Kristen McAllister, a woman whose resume glowed as brightly as her ambition. None of them guessed she'd bring a storm strong enough to rattle centuries of weathered stone. So, who exactly was Kristen before her name echoed through marble hallways? Let's rewind to the moment a modern meteor collided with ancestral tradition. Kristen grew up 3 states and a universe away in a middle-class suburb where success was measured in promotions, not pedigree. She blitzed through Cornell, cracked Fortune 500 HR departments by 26, and wrote LinkedIn posts so insightful recruiters forwarded them to CEOs. That flair caught Andrew's eye when Privateer searched for a fresh voice on its board.in. September 2020. Kristen walked into the distillery's oak panel boardroom wearing confidence like armor. She spoke fluent business metrics retention curves, day benchmarks, but she also asked questions no one ever dared. Why not tell our story to the world? The room stiffened. Andrew observed carefully. 10 minutes later, she became the youngest board member in Privateer history. Weeks later, her first marriage ended quietly, papers filed, settlements sealed. Old Boston gossiped, but Kristen's momentum only multiplied. By late 2022, she and Andrew were spotted together at increasingly intimate gatherings, charity galas, vineyard tours, a whispered weekend in Newport. Rumor insisted a candle-lit wedding took place in spring 2023. Guests sworn to secrecy, cameras politely surrendered at the door. Insiders toasted the union as a merger of ambition and legacy. Outsiders sensed friction because Kristen's eyes were already straying past the stately hedges, and the cracks widened the moment Kristen tasted a different kind of power startup fame burning brighter than ancestral chandeliers. Andrew tried, giving her everything an old money spouse could desire, a $2.2 million beach house in Rye with cedar shake shingles aging gracefully beside the Atlantic. Its interior, antique grandfather clocks, original Chippendale chairs, oil, paintings older than electricity. To longtime Cabot confidants, the property radiated taste. To Kristen, it whispered to the museum. She played hostess, dutifully poured Privateer reserves for investors. After jokes about Harvard crew butt, each soiree left her scanning the horizon for something unscripted. Old money society thrives on restraint. Kristen thrived on applause. Attention brewed like a summer storm. Silent, humid, inevitable. And when thunder finally rolled, it sounded nothing like nature. It sounded like a tech startup ringing. A ceremonial gong on IPO day. In early 2024, Kristen stunned Boston's cocktail circuit. She resigned from Privateer's board and jumped ship to Astronomer, an AI-driven SaaS darling slated for a blockbuster listing. There, achievements weren't whispered, they were blasted on Slack channels and celebrated with rooftop DJs. Kristen soared. First Senior VP of People, then Chief Culture Architect titles minted as quickly as her LinkedIn fireworks. With every product launch party, she tasted a freedom the Cabot crest never offered. But every orbit requires gravity. And astronomers came packaged in a charismatic founder, Andy Byron. Charismatic, recently divorced, and notorious for treating quarterly targets like gladiatorial games. One crimson-lit night at Gillette Kristen Stadium. And Andy shared late-night strategy. Ballad reached its soaring sessions peak, lit by neon skyline conversations about talent pipelines that cheered into confessions about restlessness. Locked onto two faces. Staffers noticed the energy first. Boston's social HR history. Interns whispered front and center on every jumbotron. Joked. Kristen Kit stopped dazzling in designer rumors remained rumors, leaning intimately until one night a stadium camera aimed a billion-pixel spotlight phone straight at temptation. TikTok, the music swelled. Lights seconds dimmed. 65,000 people gasped in unison. What happened next would not only topple a unicorn CEO, would trigger still the most surgical erasure Boston had seen since Prohibition. At the June 14, 2025, follow Gillette Stadium with me, pulsed, and as Coldplay's frontman invited lovebirds to prove it on screen. Where scandals aren't shouted down row after Rose then halted on two executives who tried woman dared to test. Too late, how far she could push against walls. Kristen's manicured hand rested on Andy's chest. Silence. His thumb brushed her cheek. The real shock, it was tender, cinematic what hand, catastrophically public. And here's the part nobody saw on the broadcast. Clips trended the Dynasty's reaction maneuver cam so cold. By midnight, so TMZ slapped side-by-side wedding ring photos under a headline dripping with schadenfreude detonated online. Most husbands watched from Privateer's ancestral library accounts differ whether he slammed blink in public, the laptop shut, no tweet, or merely exhaled, no frantic interviews. Either way, silence spoke the Cabot family's native tongue. The internet's roar grew hourly. Wealthy. Where's the husband? The backbone of billionaire aristocracy. Memes whispered about in the same breath Andrew's digital footprint turned ghost white. But with one even his verified Instagram once a gallery of maritime sunsets went dark. Their creed, the world interpreted his silence as heartbreak. No scandal. Old money circles. The house knew better. Andrew learned the sound of childhood locking before the counter-guarded word could exile a cousin from inheritance. Emergency zooms. Investors barked about optics. At Harvard, by sunrise, Andy Byron voluntarily stepped down. Words. Kristen received a paid suspension went viral. An embargoed NDA thick enough to stun an ox. Bloodline freeze. Her corporate email disintegrated. Watch the world talk deactivated. Horse badge access revoked. Mistook it. Google results began mysteriously, burying her achievements beneath waves of negative SEO. Dynasties meanwhile, Privateer's PR team released they wield nothing, invisible lever, not a syllable. The first subtle currents would lurk beneath the stillness. Kristen never suddenly recut contracts long before social media magazines pulled scheduled. Cabot's perfected the art of philanthropic gala. Quietly refinanced Kristen's name with Rum host committee, lobbied behind each president's over mahogany named the same architect, purchased entire Andrew Kit before zoning never raised his voice. Family mansions resemble living museums. Then came the financial guillotine trust clause, libraries smelling of 1720 parchment, freezing every joint asset for Kristen sealed with even higher only the bloodline knows. And as her accounts iced over, flagship crown jewel today learned the chilling truth. Rum, a sixth-generation distillery aren't fought in courts or tabloids. Influencers, they're fought in rooms. Hashtags you're no longer allowed pours into the tumblers of every Kristen tried to mount a return-drafted statement about empowerment. Andrew lined up a sympathetic podcast interview. He's curator each platform collapsed hours before rumored north of 15 billion pulled. Each financial tentacle trust ghosted LLCs. Even her own biography on astronomers' like 2024 IPO prospectus was amended. Chase paperwork PDF re-uploaded, polished cached versions scrubbed locked from the inside. Friends texted condolences. In 2020, some those didn't text at all. Cracked open for a one confidant outsider. She burst into tears, asking, "A woman do I even exist on paper anymore?" As her ambition. Meanwhile, Andrew attended a trustees meeting at the Museum of Fine Arts, nodding politely beside oil tycoons. Who exactly was Kristen stationed outside caught nothing but the taillights of a black Bentley. Let's rewind to the moment when reporters pressed the family's ancestral tradition was a photocopied excerpt grew from an 1892 Cabot diary, awazed in a middle-class suburb God, where success the rest is noise. Promotions. The message was clear. Kristen's name through Cornell faster cracked Fortune 500 HR departments by 26. Yet legends warn that erased figures sometimes come back as ghosts and ghosts forwarded them have a way of haunting legacies today. That flare caught Andrew's eye Kristen's maiden name searched for a fresh voice on its board. Fragmented blogs theorizing where she is Sicily, Singapore. Kristen walked into the distillery's oak panel. Others claim she's negotiating a tell-all with a streaming giant. She spoke lawyers for the Cabot's file takedown curves at every hint benchmarks. But the Dynasty believes time will finish what silence began. Why not tell our story? Never forgets. It only misplaces. Andrew observed somewhere in a forgotten subreddit 10 minutes later, lurks the raw kiss cam clip, millions of views, immortalized on blockchain archives. Andrew continues ruling a rum empire that ages gracefully in charred barrels. Press Boston never allowed beyond the Kristen's momentum. Investors praise his composure. By late 2022, insiders whisper she and Andrew were spotted together at increasingly intimate gatherings on the horizon. Charity galas, as if calculating whether ghosts can swim. Newport. And that leaves us with a question no dynasty can dictate. 2023. Once the world has sworn to secrecy behind the curtain. Can the
politely
curtains ever
surrendered
convince
at the
us
door.
the stage
Insiders
was empty?
toasted the union as a
So
merger
here
of
we
ambition
stand
and legacy.
between two forms of
Outsiders
power,
sensed friction,
the explosive
because
fury of
Kristen's
public
eyes
outrage
were already
and the
straying
glacial,
past the
unanswerable
hedges,
chill of
and the
legacy
cracks widened
erasure.
the moment
One
Kristen
humiliates
tasted a
you
different
fast,
kind of power startup
the other
fame, burning
unrights
brighter
you slow,
than ancestral
which is
chandeliers.
worse.
Andrew
Drop your
tried,
verdict below,
giving
if
her
you
everything an
think
old money
silence
spouse
is the
could
ultimate
desire.
weapon.
A
Hit like $2 million.
if you believe stories outlast
Beach
dynasties.
House
In Rye,
Subscribe and join us next week.
Aging gracefully
We're digging
beside
into
the
another
Atlantic.
secret the elites
Its
prayed would
interior,
stay locked in
antique
their vaults.
grandfather clocks,
And remember,
original Chippendale
truth may
chairs,
hide,
oil,
but it never sleeps.
paintings
because
older
the next
than
scandal
electricity.
is already
It's a
brewing
long-time
somewhere
Cabot
behind a
confidant,
gated
the
driveway
property
under a
radiated
gilded
taste.
chandelier, and
To Kristen,
you'll hear it
whispered
here
to the
first
museum.
before anyone
She
tries
played
to
hostess,
silence you.
dutifully